Annyeong, it's Mikey here, and guys, today I have a different video for you, not a keyboard one, and it's actually going to be a gaming mouse. So Inphic sent me out the IN10, and we're going to have to see, is this budget mouse really worth it, and how does it compare with all of the other ones I've tried. So let's go straight into the unboxing, and thank you again Inphic for sending me this out, and please make sure to like and subscribe. Starting off with the unboxing of the Inphic IN10P. Thank you again Inphic for sending me this out. Now, opening it up and receiving the box, the first thing I noticed is definitely the packaging of this box felt a little bit more on the more budget side. The whole packaging didn't feel like it was really a whole more premium feel, but in general, it's still a nice clean packaging. You get a braided cable, a dongle that I'll explain a bit later, and of course you have the actual mouse. So this is your Inphic mouse, and the size of the mouse isn't too large, but of course we're going to rip off the little stickers here, and then we're going to go in a little bit more in depth of taking a look. So first things I kind of felt with holding the mouse is that it doesn't feel like the usual mouse that I've grabbed. I think in terms of the ergonomics, just like by having it a bit in my hand, it definitely feels a little bit more flat on the sides, a little bit more straight. The whole build quality though is actually pretty decent. I would think that, you know, for what I was expecting for like a budget mouse, I thought it might be a little bit more on the budget side, but it feels quite solid. And of course we're gonna have to weigh this mouse before going to a sound test, and it weighs 61 grams. So we've done the unboxing, we've done like a sound test, and so far one of my thoughts. There is some weight to this mouse. I would say that the mouse does feel a little bit on the heavier side compared to some of the other mice that I've tried out there. And in terms of the thickness too, the mouse is on a little bit of the thicker side. I would say this almost reminds me of like my Logitech G703 in terms of how thick it is. Though it's a little bit shorter in terms of compared to the G703, but in terms of like how it feels in my hand, it kind of feels that way. These sides feel a little bit too flat for me in terms of like to make it comfortable in my hand. So if you guys kind of can see it here, it feels a little bit too flat on the sides here where my thumb rests and like where this rests. I would say that it does feel a little bit too flat. Of course, it depends on the person's hands, right? Some people with a little bit maybe on the skinnier hand side, this would feel comfortable. For me, it just feels a little bit more on the uncomfortable side, but we're really gonna have to test it out, like go into seeing how it performs, and of course compare with a lot of the other boards out there, and specifically see how like it performs in gaming. And then of course we want to also check out like the website and see, you know, how much is it, what does it come with, and is it really competitive? So let's go right into that. So first of all, we're going to his website. We see that it's $59.99, so it's about 60 USD. Comes with a KP905 gaming chip and a PAW3395 sensor. Comes with an 8K receiver, so that's really nice to see at that price range, right? $60 is definitely more on the more affordable budget side. It's supposed to be a gaming mouse, so you do get 2.4 with this. You also get Bluetooth with this as well, so you get multiple ways of connection. And it's supposed to weigh 60 grams, so my weighing on the scale could be off a little bit here and there, but they're saying it's about 60 grams, so it's on the light side, but not on like the super light side. I would say, yeah, like decently weighted in terms of the mouse, but in your hand, it definitely feels a little bit heavier than what is actually stated. It's kind of interesting how a feel in the hand can be different, so different. Now, if you go into the driver section, you can actually download the driver, and I thought it might be a web app, but no, it's just a downloaded software. So if you run the software, you can actually take a look here and see what it is. So the software itself definitely looks a little bit more basic. The way I would mention it is like, you're not getting a really in-depth crazy software, maybe like Logitech or Razer, but in general, you get everything you need with this thing. This also does have lighting, so the mouse does come with its own lighting. You can't really change the colors of the lighting, but you can change the brightness on it. You also can do different polling rates, right? So it goes all the way up to 8K. Interestingly enough, if you connect it wired, it actually loses 8K and only goes to 1K. Now, this has a really small adapter comparatively to the actual like polling rate and the receiver. Normally with the 8K receiver, I'm expecting it a little bit bigger. This one's really small. It's actually that like the gray USB connection. That extender is actually the adapter with a USB dongle, which is actually inside the mouse. You actually have to remove it from the mouse. So something I learned later on. But yeah, you get everything you need in the software basics, but not much more. It is very basic, and I didn't really see a macro settings either. Now, in terms of the usage of the mouse, so of course right away we're going to Apex Legends, and we're going to be testing out the mouse wheel. So why do I test out the mouse wheel? In Apex Legends, you use a lot of mouse wheel movement, specifically for jumping, tap strafing. It's really important that a mouse wheel is quite smooth and very easy to operate, and especially it's very reactive. As you can see here, I'm actually practicing bunny hopping, and bunny hopping really requires a lot of mouse movement, as you can really see with my left hand. Left hand corner with my hand. It's a lot of mouse wheel movement, and even like movement, like tech that you can use in game, right? This is like rope climbing, trying to do like super jumps off rope, right? You still require the mouse wheel, and it requires a really specific quick timing. Now, one thing I've noticed with this mouse wheel is the mouse wheel is smooth in terms of the feel, but in terms of the reaction of the mouse wheel, it felt a little bit slow. It seems like the reaction on this mouse wheel is a little bit on the weaker side. I'm kind of surprised with that because like when I use tap strafing, if you remember my last video with Pulsar and with the MCHOSE, the tap strafe off the jump pad with Octane's jump pad was a lot smoother and a lot quicker, and actually went a little bit more of a hard direction, like a really hard directional pull. This one, I feel like the directional pull is a little bit weaker, and I'm not able to do like full more of an angled turn, right? Like for example, trying to do like a 180 turn. Definitely feels like it's a little bit weaker in terms of the mouse wheel. Now, in terms of using the actual mouse with like shooting and aiming, it's actually good. I don't feel like there's a ton of latency input like issues with using the mouse, right, when I'm holding it. In terms of like practicing aim and like recoil control, the recoil control is not bad, but I feel like the mouse feels like it's pulling a little bit more, and I have to pull a little bit more to actually control the recoil. Now, in terms of flicking, I feel like when I was using the wingman to try to do some flicking practice, it felt like I was always a little bit off. To be fair, I'm not the best at this, but this is why we got to also test in Aimlabs, see what it looks and how it feels like. Now, in terms of Aimlabs, so using it in Aimlabs, you can see here like me doing the grid shot. The grid shot is just a quick shooting and trying to be as much accurate as possible. Right? You're trying to have a full control of the mouse in this little grid. Now, using it with this mouse, I'm getting a 92% accuracy and a score of 93,000 with a 217 millisecond reaction time. So I went with MCHOSE's K7 because that is the mouse that I've been using most recently, and a mouse that I really enjoy using a lot lately. In terms of like the feel and comparison, they're both very similar weight in terms of actual weight, but it felt like I had a little bit more control of the MCHOSE, and it felt like I didn't have to put as much tension in my forearm. I really heavily felt with this Inphic that I did have to put a little bit more tension in my forearms. Like really had to tense it up a bit to really have more control of the mouse. Surprisingly enough, it does feel a little bit heavier. Like after I use the Inphic mouse, I tend to notice that my arm feels like it's been using a mouse that feels a little bit more weighted. I think it's due to specifically the ergonomics of the mouse. This mouse is definitely has an interesting design to it in terms of like the slides and how you're holding it, the grip wise. As you can see with my MCHOSE, like I'm doing the whole grid, like the flicking and practice, like the spider shot, and I feel like it just feels lighter, even though when I did do a weight, and I'm going to show you guys a little bit later for the weighing comparison, but it's supposed to be similar weight, and yet it feels a little bit on the lighter side with the MCHOSE compared to the Inphic. Now, doing a tracking practice, I noticed that the accuracy is still quite similar to what I normally get with other mice, so it's always going to be around the 32-33%. And then this is my MCHOSE, which I'm trying it with this one as well, but I feel like I had a little bit better control with the MCHOSE in terms of my tracking. And again, the mouse is always going to be dependent on the person, right? This is just my personal experience with the mouse. Does not mean that the mouse is horrible in any way and that you can't do tracking or flicking or anything like that. It's just how my grip with the mouse feels in terms of it. Like it definitely feels a little bit harder. Now, the Inphic mouse definitely feels like it has a lot more grip too. When I was actually trying to, test it here in the friction with my mouse pad, I could feel the friction with the Inphic a lot more. While the MCHOSE, I was feeling almost like no friction, and it was just sliding. Now, we're going into here. So pulsars on the left, we have the G703. This is the main character of this video, which is going to be the Inphic IN10. And we have so many different mouse. So that's the Glacier 8K. We have the U-Eden S9 Pro. We have the Acco Pulse 01 and the MCHOSE K7 Ultra. One thing I would like to do is kind of show you guys a sound comparison of like how loud each clicks are. So you could see here like the loudness of the clicks. That IN10 does have a little bit of a louder click. Now I want to give you guys like the side profiles of each mouse. So this is like the grip on the IN10, and the IN10 definitely has a little bit more of a, I would say, palm grip compared to say the other mice that I've tried. It definitely feels a little bit more comfortable doing a palm than doing like a hybrid or a claw grip. I would say that this mouse would feel much more comfortable with those that have a little bit of a longer fingers instead of like me who has very short fingers. Now, of course, let me give you kind of like what it would sound like. So overall, the mouse does have a little bit of a louder sound profile. And of course, let me go into my G703. So the G703 is what I would think is the most similar in terms of what it feels like, where a palm grip is going to feel a lot more comfortable than using a claw grip on this mouse. Like as you can see with the claw grip size on the side profiles, it definitely does feel a little bit more uncomfortable. Now, it is a little bit on the higher side, right? Like these both mice feel a little bit higher in terms of like how it rests in the palm. And of course, comparing with the sound, and as you can see, the G703 actually has very quiet clicks. And this is the Pulsar X2H, which really is a claw grip mouse. It's really built in terms of the design, like as you can see from the side profile, really meant to be a claw grip. It's not as comfortable as a palm grip for sure. And as you can see, like how the mouse is fully designed, the shape-wise, it curves heavily down in the front just to be a much more of a claw grip mouse. And of course, let me give you the sound. Now going into the Glacier 8K, and my apologies that the mouse on the side is a bit dusty there, but this is the mouse that I really found the most comfortable for me. It's a smaller mouse, definitely has a much more of a hybrid grip. You can do a palm grip or you can do claw grip. It really works in many ways. It just has a interesting way to do many different grips with this mouse, which is super light and comfortable to use. Let me also give you like a sound of this mouse. So guys, I just gave you guys like a couple of different examples of like how it feels in terms of grips and like the different grips that you can grab. So you can see kind of compare with like the IN10 and know like what mouse really works in terms of grip wise now. And for you specifically. So I'm removing a couple mice here because I haven't really used them. I feel like they are not going to be as strong in terms of comparisons here for this mouse, and really focus on the mouse that I really enjoyed the most. Now we're going to go first straight into looking at it with like my two favorite mice, which is the MCHOSE K7 Ultra and the Glacier 8K. So these two mice are very different in size, but have been the most comfortable for me. Now the Glacier 8K has a really nice like side curve to it, which feels really comfortable from where my thumb placement is and where my third finger goes. Same goes with the MCHOSE. It has that little comfortableness. The IN10 on the other hand is a little bit more on the straight side. Like you do see that curve there, but in terms of the actual feel when you're holding it, it really feels like there's not much of a curve. It feels quite straight. Now, if you have a bit more of like a longer fingers, that might be a better feel for you because, you know, it goes straight down and you're not really having it like into the mouse and having it stuck. As you can see, going into like the actual gliding test for my own channel here, but the IN10 definitely has a decent glide to itself, but you can really feel the friction and know that it does have a more of a braking feel to it. So if you have it on a mouse pad, you'll feel that it has quite a bit of friction inside of it. Now, in terms of the balance of the mouse, I feel like it is still front heavy. Like you see where I'm holding the mouse, it's not right in the middle, but I actually have to hold it a little bit more on the front side just to have a little bit more balance while I'm holding it. So it is front in terms of like weight wise, front heavy. And I mean, that's to be fair, right? Most mice usually have a lot of the materials and hardware in the front side, and then the back is a little bit more on the MCR side or like the lighter stuff. Now, this is the G703, which has been like the glidiest mouse that I've had. And it is super slippery. Like even when you're holding it down, you feel that it is quite slippery. This is what I would say, like in terms of balance wise, pretty decent. It's still front heavy, but a little bit more balanced, especially if you have the weight on this thing, right? Like the G7 III normally comes with weight on the back, which really balances it to be like a full balanced mouse. And the MCHOSE K7 Ultra, right, as you can see, the mouse actually glides decently. You don't get a lot of friction on this, on the pads, and which is really nice. I personally like that, and especially because I use a little bit more of a higher sense. The mouse itself feels really good. It feels very well balanced. Yes, it's still a bit more on the front heavier side, but due to the charging, like the battery in the back, it actually does have a little bit more of a balanced feel. This is the chill key, which you can even see while I'm hitting it and moving it, that it does have more of a front weight bias. The front is a little bit more friction, while the back is more slippery and light. And you can see that in terms of the build as well, with like looking underneath, which is completely see-through. It is decently balanced in terms of the feel, though. When you have it in your hand, it is quite light, which is really appreciated. I do like this one because of how light it feels in my hand. It definitely feels quite comfortable, especially because my hands are so small. Now, the Ueden S9 was a very, very good example of like a very well balanced mouse in terms of the front and back weight ratio. It does feel really like it's well balanced off as a mouse. I was quite impressed with how they had done it before, and for a budget mouse, that was really good. Now, this is the Pulsar. The Pulsar also has a very good glide to it, and the balance is still in the front for this one. Like, I feel like the front is definitely a lot more heavy than, say, the back side of this mouse. And I think it's specifically due to how the design is, and you can really feel that the front is heavy. The In10, it is front heavier, but it's got a decent weight to it where it feels a okay balance. But I would say that if you are like holding it, you'll feel that weight a little bit more towards the front of it. Now, after removing the USB dongle from the In10, you said that I was at 59 grams. Like the Pulsar is 52, the Glacier 8K is at 51. So I'm used to a little bit on the lighter side of mice. But the thing was, the K7 Ultra is a 59 gram mouse, but feels much lighter. It's kind of interesting, right? Like, I used to use the Pulsar one for a bit for the weight of it, because I just liked having a bit more control on the mouse. Lighter mice, I feel like, is a bit harder to control. The In10 is quite interesting, where at 59 grams, same as the K7 Ultra, as I was mentioning, and I've said this actually quite a lot of times now, it has a feel to it where it feels heavier than the actual weight that is measured. It's interesting how when you are using the mouse and when you're gaming with it, you will find that your hand can get fatigued with it. Specifically for me, I think it's just the way that it is with my hands. Even though this is a size that's not like on a very small size or a very large mouse, it's actually in the medium range. And I would say if you have like a medium sized hand, this is a very decent mouse. Like, if you see the measurement from the top to bottom here, right, we're looking at 119.6, so almost 120 millimeters. That's not that large, right? And even the top to bottom is 38.7. The sides as well, you're looking at a total of 57.7, so almost 58 millimeters. When you do the full measurements of it, it's not that big of a mouse, and it's not that wide or tall, right? This is my K7 Ultra at 125.8, which is a little bit longer. The sides are also a little bit wider at 60.4, and then the top to bottom also 39.6. Or 39.3, which is technically a little bit higher. This is the Glacier 8K, which is 116, so it's a little bit shorter, right? And the sides is going to be around the same 57.1, and the top bottom at 38.8. So very similar. And interestingly, even with that, they're supposed to be quite similar in terms of the, dimensions of it. I feel like the In10 works better for those with a medium-sized hand. Some people that have a little bit of a longer finger and has medium-sized hands. It was interesting that I felt that way. And I think it's just because of the ergonomics of the mouse. This is why every mouse and every person has a different preference to them. Everybody's hands is different. The size, the length, everything is quite different per person. So this is why, you can see here, my fingers are 66.9. That's my middle finger. And then my palm length goes to 98 millimeters. Hopefully that helps you guys figure out to see like how it works for you. I would say if your fingers were a little bit longer than mine, which was at 66.9, and maybe like if your fingers were a bit more on like the 75 millimeters to 80 millimeters, you would feel that this mouse is going to be a bit more comfortable for you. If you are someone who has very small hands, kind of like myself, shorter fingers, I would say that this mouse probably isn't the best fit for you. Like the Glacier 8K is going to be a much better fit for you in terms of that, because of the way that the mouse is shaped. But when you consider like, right, compared to the Glacier, which is actually sitting at close to like 90 USD, and the K7 Ultra at 80 USD, this is a very well-priced mouse for the In10, right? You're looking at 60 USD with 8K. That's quite impressive. The USB dongle even, right? You can see right here is quite small. You have the adapter and the dongle, very, very compact, which is really nice. I would say it is a lot more affordable, right? 60 USD is much more affordable, and I'm sure that, you know, this goes on sale too. If you're considering getting a gaming mouse, I think really going towards like the whole high-end gaming mouse is not as important anymore. These mice are doing a great job with it. I would highly suggest you go check it out for yourself. So I hope this video helped you guys to see if this mouse is worth it. For me personally, it's not something that I like, especially with the design of it and the comfort in my hand. Some people might really like it. It depends on the person, of course. I would say you're gonna really have to try it yourself and really compare it. Like hopefully you can check with my measurements and see, is this something that you would be interested in? So I'll have the links in the description. Go check it out, and please make sure to like and subscribe and catch the other videos I got. And I'll have to catch you guys next time.